Full Service Radio is proudly supported and hosted by Simplecast, the easiest way for a podcast creator to publish and distribute audio on the internet. For more information, visit simplecast.com.
You tune into Full Service Radio.
Full Service Radio.
Full Service.
Full Service. Full Service.
Full Service Radio.
Peace, everyone, and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting live from the lobby of the Line, D.C. This podcast is where dynamic people of color in the food and agricultural space share their personal food journeys, passions, and perspectives that stem from the land, all exemplifying the spirit of activism in their own edible way. Let's get started. Hey, peace everyone, and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. Today on the show, I have a really cool guest, and sorry for the delay, guys. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty, or I don't know if you want to call it a technical difficulty, but stuff happens, but we're here and we're ready. So I have a great guest today, guys, and her name is Rebecca Lemos-Otero. Yes, I got it right. And Rebecca has dedicated her career to making safe green spaces where children and youth are the main stewards and cultivators. As co-founder and executive director of City Blossoms, Rebecca gets to combine her interests in community development, entrepreneurship, horticulture, the arts, and working with youth. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Did I say your last name right? Almost.
I appreciate how you worked on it.
Okay,
yes,
thank you. Thank you. I don't like jacking up folks' names, okay? Like I want to respect the name. Throw some respect on it. So thank you for coming to the show. I'm so excited to just have you in this space. I've seen you in action numerous times, but just to have a one-on-one conversation with you is going to be really dope. So, and I get to learn more about you. So the rundown, guys, for today, we're going to connect back to your roots, Rebecca, and we're going to learn more about your heritage and what this means to you in the agricultural space. We're going to learn about current City Blossom programs and initiatives because this organization is extremely dynamic, and I'm actually going to tell you in a moment how to find them because I like for our listeners to look at the page and listen so they can see all the goodness that you guys are doing. We're going to learn how green spaces can reduce depression. And we're also going to educate listeners on how to be more hands-on in building edible spaces because Rebecca is so hands-on, y'all. She was in here about to fix some stuff in a minute. Hence the reason why we're a little bit behind. So welcome again, Rebecca. Peace. This is going to be great. And so, Rebecca, who is Rebecca and what are your roots? Because I know you in the City Blossom space, in the food space, in the green space. But, I want our listeners to be able to connect to, the soul of who you are and where you come from. And I know you're from D.C.
Yes. Born and raised D.C. Okay. I'm actually, my family house is 2 blocks away from where we're recording this now.
Can you tell folks how you actually used to work in the church before it was a hotel?
Yeah, so I grew up in Ems, Morgan, and my parents are activists, and I'll go back to that. But so every summer I'd be, I was already kind of working starting at age 13. And one time, for a few years, I worked with Urban Rangers, which was an organization that was founded by someone who lived in the neighborhood. And we would come to this church and partner with City Bikes and had a whole bike set up. And I learned how to take a bike apart and put it back together. And it would be me and a bunch of teenage boys mostly. And I would teach them and support them in learning how to put bikes together, and we'd find recycled ones or ones thrown away and fix them up and take care of them for ourselves and then share them with other kids and all that. So it's really funny being back in this space and seeing how it's changed.
Well, we're here.
Yeah.
We're here. So tell us a bit about your roots and your heritage, Rebecca.
So like I said, I was born in D.C. I'm a little bit of a funky mix. My mom is Bolivian. She's a Bolivian immigrant. And my father is Paraguayan.
Oh, wow.
And he was a political refugee. And so they both came and met up here at what was called the Wilson Center, or not the Wilson Center, this Wilson Community Center on 16th and like Columbia Road. And so, yeah, I feel very much like I'm a DC kid, born and raised, like I said before. But both of my parents were really interesting. They both were very much social activists, ties both to Latin America. So our house was called like Hotel Lemos for a long time because there's always someone staying there. Someone either from Colombia, or from Paraguay, or Nicaragua, Chile. Like they were always just coming through. If it was that they couldn't be in their country for a period of time, they would come through and hang out with us. Or if for some reason they were coming to the States to do either usually protest work or advocacy. So that's kind of like the world I grew up in. Mm-hmm. And then my parents, and this really stems from them, as well as my grandmother, was, wherever you live is home, and wherever home is, you do good. Right. So both of my parents started their own nonprofits in the 80s, one around childcare and the other one around housing. And so ever since, like I said, ever since I was 13, I was put to work in some kind of something or other. So I either worked at Centronia, or I worked with Urban Rangers, or sister to sister, hermana hermana. And it was always just kind of working with other kids usually, or kids slightly younger than me. I think when I was 13, I started teaching jewelry classes to a group of girls who then I got them to work into a garden at some point. And now I've taught their kids.
Oh my God. Do you feel old when you think about that?
Yeah, just a little bit. So,
and I know you're not old.
So I really grew up doing all kinds of community stuff in Adams Morgan and in Columbia Heights. That was mostly that was home.
So you identify, though, as a Latina woman. Like, how do you identify?
I identify as a Latina woman, okay. And mostly because my parents would definitely send us to Latin America whenever they could. Mm-hmm. So, like I did, summer, how your family sends you down?
Yes.
Exactly. So I would be sent to Bolivia or Colombia or whatever. But my real roots feel like they're based in DC more than anything. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so I definitely kind of identify as Latina versus like Bolivian, Paraguayan type of thing, more so. Because I feel like I'm a mix between that and just DC and DC culture, and definitely influenced by like Salvadorian culture, that I grew up, surrounded by Salvadorian families and restaurants and food and music and everything. So I feel like I'm kind of just a mesh of all that is this neighborhood, was this neighborhood.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, actually, I was on a panel last night, and we were asked a question. There were tons of questions, but one of the things that I always, take pride in is coming up. I grew up in what I would call like a little mini melting pot, because I had Jamaican friends. I had friends from El Salvador. I can tell you, I think my El Salvador friends were on the 9th floor. My Jamaican friends were on like the basement level. My other Jamaican friends were on the 7th floor. My Mexican friends were down the hall. My Ethiopian friends were next door. I had sticky rice at like a very young age. I had the best curry at a very young age. And just being able to experience like all those cultures and to connect now to like the space that I'm in, is just making those connections has just been like incredible and just really important when it comes to like food identity and stuff like that. So when you said El Salvador, I had to bring that up because I remember my El Salvadorian friends and tasting so many like dishes. It was just great. So growing up in DC, obviously you have witnessed a huge transition. You along with everyone else.
Putting it simply.
That's putting it lightly. And you were the ultimate activist, okay? Forget edible activist. Like, you were an activist when you were a baby. What did that landscape look like back then versus what it looks like now?
Oh, God.
We know the answer, but you're going to say it.
Oh, you're putting me on the hot spot.
I am.
What it looked like before, I have a very clear memory, particularly of Columbia Road between 14th and 15th Street. That was where my mom's center was and still is, Centronia.
Oh, wow.
And so I have a very, very clear image of that space because that's where we were for hours at a time. My mom would have nighttime meetings. We'd be hanging out there. all that kind of stuff. There was a man and a woman on the corner who would sell mangoes cut with hot sauce, lime, and a little bit of salt.
Yes.
And then like their, and they would have their fruit cart with all kinds of other fruit and stuff like that. And you knew those people. All the apartment buildings were filled with families, mostly immigrant families. Mm-hmm. And then the building complex around the corner was predominantly African American families. And so like that point of 14th and Columbia was like kind of where everyone just walked by at some point, which is why it's kind of crazy that our first garden was there, because it really wasn't the center point where everyone would walk by and see it. Mm-hmm. But so it was that, and there was music all the time, and the Target and the metro station, and none of that existed. So there was the carryout, there was the Subway, the dress barn, and the post office.
The dress barn; those don't even exist anymore, do they? I don't think so.
En eso no me meto.
What she said? Yo no sé.
But so yeah, and there was a Safeway, and then a community garden in the back, and then there was Centronia and LAYC, Latin American Youth Center, and then a few other organizations around the area, Carecen, Clínica del Pueblo, like all that stuff. So it was a very active, organized community at the same time. At least that's what it felt like to me. Very celebrated, while at the same time also facing a lot of issues around poverty, and in the 90s particularly there was a lot of like youth violence happening, all that kind of stuff. And then the metro came, the Target came, gentrification came.
Still coming.
So, waves, man, waves, tsunamis.
Tsunamis. Oh shoot.
So Adams Morgan definitely changed, and Columbia Heights changed. I think the interesting thing is, at least in Columbia Heights, in certain pockets and places, there's still there's still families there that I walk by and I know the people and all that. But a lot of the apartment buildings have been that didn't organize have now turned into condos. Yeah, it's the usual story. It's just. People have been priced out for in a lot of cases and all that. So a lot of the kids who I used to work with, I'll meet up with them and see them in the street and stuff. And it turns out, they now live in like Silver Spring, PG County, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the reality we're in now. But that said, I also want to be really respectful of the fact that when I walk through these neighborhoods that I know so well, like I said, there's still pockets of people. And I don't want to just say, well, Columbia Heights changed, so it's done, or so-and-so is done.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's still, pockets of kids who are running around after school and, like, need places to go hang out. And so that's one of the reasons I definitely will always think that our work will be, in these neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
Even as Adams Morgan and D.C. in general, like, changes.
What was your relationship to food? If any, well, everybody has a relationship to food in whatever capacity, but in terms of the growing space, the land space, was there any prior relationship to City Blossoms and the work that you do now?
Not tons.
And that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's the funny thing is people are always like, oh, food. And cooking, you must love cooking. I'm like,
actually, I don't.
So, yeah, I make a mean salad. So, yeah, the funny thing is the activism, the community development, the community organizing stuff came first. Mm-hmm. And food was always part of that, right? Because you throw a party, you have food.
Absolutely.
You invite families, you do potluck, you do like all that kind of stuff. So food was always very much involved, and food was always a point of pride for people. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing that I did observe really early on, was that whenever you went somewhere, someone was really excited to share their food with you. And so for us, again, when we started talking about the gardens a little bit, tying that in, that was still like an extension of that. Is where's that pride? And let's tap into that.
Yeah.
And, that sense of pride around what we're growing, what we're eating.
Wonderful. I like your earrings, by the way. Sorry, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at your earrings. Sorry, guys. I had to say that. For those who are just tuning in, this is Melissa L. Jones with the Edible Activist Podcast, and I am here chatting with Rebecca Lemos-Otero. of City Blossoms. I'm going to get her last name right, okay? I'm going to get it to the T. I actually want to learn Spanish as a second language. I'm just going to toss that out there. That's been a long-term goal of mine. But we're just having a conversations. I have been in Rebecca's space a few times, but I've never had a one-on-one with her. And so just learning about her upbringing in D.C. and, the landscape that she has witnessed change and is still changing. And I bring those questions up not to just necessarily pinpoint the bad or just pinpoint the good, but I feel like that ties into a lot of the work that people are doing now, and just seeing like all the change, that you all are incorporating and still incorporating, and just thinking back to where you were when you were in DC and just, what that landscape looked like. So thank you for sharing that with us. And so thank you guys for listening. And for those who are just tuning in, this is going to be a really dope show. And I'm just happy to be here with Rebecca. So you worked on, speaking of not really having any ties to the land and growing in that respect prior to City Blossoms, which we're going to talk more about. But I was reading that there was one small project that you worked on that kind of just was the catalyst behind City Blossoms, and it just took off from there.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened.
What was the rundown?
So I think it was 1998. I'm terrible with dates, but it's 1998. It was right before I went to college. So I think I just gave my age away. Not that it matters.
I wasn't calculating.
Around 1998, someone did what we later started calling drop and plop, which is someone outside of a community comes in.
Drop and plop.
Doesn't necessarily do community building work or partner too much, and they plop something into the community. They drop it, they plop it. And then kind of walk away and be like, look at this amazing thing I made you. Peace out. And then there's no thought about sustainability, staffing, costs that are being associated to it. And so sometimes those projects, as well-meaning as they may be, turn into something else that the community or that organization has to now balance and work with. And sometimes it's more of a stress. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But that's one of the reasons we really we try to be really conscious about how we enter a space. So that said, someone did kind of something like that at Centronia, which at that point was Calvary Bilingual Multicultural Learning Center.
Okay.
Just throw that out for whoever's listening remembers those days. Anyway, so we had a small garden space there that just kind of showed up, and I was asked by one of the counselors to go out with a group of kids. I'd never gardened before, this was not...
No green thumb, nothing.
I loved going to Rock Creek Park because it was behind my house, but that was about all my connection with nature really on a regular basis. And so I took some kids out there and we started planting some seeds. The joke is, that our first plants were Michael Jackson, and I forget the name of the other one. There are 2 tomato plants, and we planted them in shade. We had at some point a goldfish that died and got buried back there. Aww. We were just guessing at what we were doing, right? And it was this plot that was maybe 15 feet by 15 feet, really small. But what was magical about it is once we started doing it, and one of these neighbors still lives there, and I see him all the time. It was me and a bunch of, 10-year-olds or whatever. And adults started walking by down Columbia Road, and they would stop and be like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. This is how we do it in my country, or, hey, you're really doing that wrong. Or, wow, those plants are really beautiful. Your sunflowers are gorgeous, blah, blah, blah. So it was this mixed array of remarks. But what was interesting was that the adults were stopping and seeing us. And seeing us as someone doing something in the community, versus a lot of work sometimes that was happening then was very much directed at youth, but it's you're going to now go do this. You're going to do this. We're bringing you this. And this was very much creating our own space. And I say our own because at that point I was so young that it was just kind of all of us together.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I found that really powerful, and I found it powerful in the way that people were seeing us in the space. And so that was kind of the light bulb moment.
Wow.
And that garden still exists.
It does.
Yeah. It's gone through 20 renditions, but it still exists.
That's okay. Before we take a really quick break, we're going to talk more about City Blossoms, but, just give us a brief spill on the mission behind City Blossoms, because it is awesome.
It's creating healthy communities through kid-driven community green spaces. So pretty much it means creating spaces that kids fill and shape, and through that doing community development work.
Those kids look like they just have a ball. I go on their page. So City Blossoms, if you're on Instagram, I know they're on Instagram. That's on Facebook too?
Yes.
Okay. Just go on their page, guys. I mean, it just lights up my life. It really does. Just to see the joy on their face being in this green space. But we're going to talk more about that after our break. We'll be back, guys.
Thank you.
You're listening to Perfect Day, produced by Artists Authentic. For more of Authentic's work, visit allornothingstudios.com. Welcome back, guys. It's Melissa L. Jones with the Edible Activist Podcast, and I am broadcasting live from the lobby of the Line DC here on Full Service Radio, and I have Rebecca Lemos-Otero. I hope I'm getting closer to getting your name right, sister. Rebecca is the executive director and co-founder of City Blossoms, which is a wonderful organization and initiative that works with youth to, cultivate green spaces for them in the city. And she's going to talk a bit more about her mission. Rebecca didn't have a green thumb coming up, but she was always like a mini activist in the community, grew up in D.C., a couple blocks from where we are here in Adams Morgan, has all been conscious for a very long time, though. Been conscious for quite some time, and your parents were activists. So that just came on you, and you naturally took the baton, and the work just continues. So, like I said, City Blossoms is an awesome initiative. You go on their page and the smiles of the staff and the kids would just light up your life. And I love to see that in green spaces, and we need it. We need it. So doing a lot of work with the youth, Rebecca, my question for you, when kids enter a green space, especially at a young age, which is so, so very important, what are they automatically connecting to mentally when they come into these green spaces?
So with City Blossoms, we work with kids anywhere from 2 to about 19. So, quite a range. Mm-hmm. And so quite a range in reactions. Usually if they come into the garden young, they come totally ready to be explorers. They are just, let them loose and they just go for it, right? They want to touch, smell, taste everything. No fear, type of thing. Mm-hmm. And with once they have a few, kind of opportunities to be in the gardens with us, then they definitely get fearless around just picking something and eating it, almost a little too fearless. And that's why we like to have littles come into the garden, because if they have that mentality,
You call them little littles?
I call them
Oh
little
my
littles.
gosh,
The
little littles.
But if we have them that young coming into the garden, then, then they're already creating their relationship with nature and food that is very much their own. And it's not based too much on biases of like, oh, something's dirty or something.
Right.
So, and then as kids age up, when we first started, if they were 10 years old, like they were already like, that's not for me.
They came in. That would have been me.
Yeah, exactly. But now I'm starting to see, because DC has really focused on helping young kids, particularly in schools, get connected to gardens. There's definitely a lot more like, there's a few, but then there's also like, oh yeah, I know kale, whatever. And then the teenagers at the beginning are usually the toughest. Because they're like, I got my nails done, I got my hair done, like
I ain't getting dirty.
Exactly. But then once they have some time in the space, usually, because the way we create it is, it's not that you have to do something, is that here's the space, you fill it, and you find out what it is that you like about it. So that if it's that you need a space, just a quiet green space to go read and be left alone for a little while, so you got some alone time, then that's what it's there for. If you have the space because you want to be with your friends, if you want to water, if you want to, take care of the plants. And usually by the end, kids and young people want to experience a little bit of everything. They are all explorers in the end.
Absolutely. Yep.
So they definitely get that. But the first inclination might be a little like, I'm from DC, we don't do that type of thing. But then, of course, as soon as you talk to them, almost everyone has a family story, right? Of like, but my family member does this, my grandmother does that. So everyone usually has had some experience. We just, help them kind of create their own personal relationship.
Absolutely. And I think the greatest thing about it, so you asked me, and I get these questions pretty often. They're like, Melissa, how did you get into food? Because I tell people, I'm not really, I'd say quote unquote, I wasn't supposed to be in this space. Okay. Like I was doing something totally different and opposite of all of this, but not that the show is about me. It's about Rebecca, but I'm going to tie this all in. So, a lot of people know that I made the food and health connection like a while back, and it was really due to my mom having to change her lifestyle, et cetera, et cetera. I got really, when I started learning about all that and started watching documentaries, I got heavy into soil. I didn't realize how vital soil was to the environment. And so this was all just a personal journey for me as I'm planning events, living my life, running my business. I was learning about food, health, and soil. And I was just like, why was I not introduced to soil during my youth? Like, this is so crazy. So the fact that kids can walk into a space and literally they're getting dirty, but touching something that's so vital and so healthy and so calming and so soothing for them, it's just amazing. It is just an amazing thing. And, I'm not sure how early on you all teach them about, the sciences behind, in whichever way, simplified way, for the littles, or even, for the youth up to 19. I mean, this is an educational process for everyone. But I just think back to my youth, and I wasn't in a garden.
Yeah,
I wasn't. I mean, I was a bit of a tomboy out playing baseball, basketball, and I would go take, wash all the dirt and stuff off. But I wasn't getting my hands into plots and dirt because I didn't know anything. But it's so vital. Do you all teach, is there any, I know you guys teach a lot of lessons, obviously, but is there any curriculums at all around healthy soil and just them touching the earth as they come into these spaces?
I'm trying to think within our curriculum. There's probably, I know I have many educators who are part of our team who are just as into getting kids with their hands in the soil. Like Jessica particularly loves to break down soil. But so as far as individual lessons, yes, we definitely have them. But more than anything, it's whenever kids come into a space, it's just having them, like you said, put their hands in the soil, look for worms usually, look for demystify soil, but also showcase kind of its magic.
Yes.
Because it's on one end, demystify it so you're not scared of the bugs that you see and all that. But on the other hand, be this beautiful stuff. If you smell it and you smell that it's healthy, then that that millions of microorganisms are living in it. And this is kind of the beginning of everything. And you put a seed in it.
Exactly.
And magical things happen. So it's that, a little bit of both, right? And just being completely into and thankful of the power that's in it.
You make me want to go play in soil right now. Like right now, just like smell the earth.
Oh, yeah.
Rebecca, how can green spaces reduce depression?
I want to be careful to answer that because
Yes.
I'm not a clinical doctor professional, but there are reports that have come out. Specifically, one came out last year that was highlighted in NPR in the University of Philadelphia, I believe, or Penn University of Pennsylvania, that really focused on the idea that just what is the impact of green spaces in communities. And what they said, and it's not the perfect report because they weren't even necessarily having people interact with the green spaces, they were just walking by.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But they were saying just by having one, whereas you had an empty lot that nothing was happening in and maybe it was collecting trash and was clearly like just vacant, versus having a green space that may have some landscaping or trees or a garden, that the difference in how people felt about their community and their own mental health, that they would report back that they felt better. And so just that they felt like a little bit lighter, a little bit happier. And I think it's true. I think it makes a huge difference, both in just how does your community look to you, has a strong effect on how you feel about it, and then how you feel about your family being in it and yourself. But then also just having nature around you and having access to it, I think makes a huge, huge impact. And so in the most densest part of the city, like Adams Morgan, like Columbia Heights, I think it's crucial that we make sure that we put land aside, that we can have green spaces so young people can still have that access, because I think in the end it does help with their mental health.
Absolutely. I mean, even as adults, what is one of the first things we want to do when we're down and we're out, we need to just get away? We want to go to a beach.
Exactly.
We want to see water. We want to see green land, right?
Or take a walk.
Take a walk. We want to hug a tree. Yes. At least I do.
Yes.
Hug several trees.
I like to hug a tree.
Hug a tree. You want to connect with nature.
Yes. And sometimes I don't think you automatically know why or what it is that you're looking for. When you go to the beach, you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to lay on the sand and relax. But yes, it's the sound of the water. It's the having the sand underneath you. It's having the plants around you. So we may forget what that connection is about, but I think we all do end up craving it.
Absolutely. So you all, City Blossoms, works with a dynamic group of youth called Mighty Greens.
Yes.
And I want to have them on the show eventually. We're going to work that out, right?
Yes,
I want to have them in. And first of all, I'm all about entrepreneurship when it just comes to, in general, but especially with communities of color, but really for youth. So there are like levels to this, right? And I just think it's awesome that at a young age that they are not only are they learning how to grow food and just grow other, whether it be herbs or whatever for other products, but they're learning how to become entrepreneurs, and they're learning business models. They're learning strategy. That is so important. Can you talk to us about Mighty Greens?
Sure. So just stepping back a little bit, I see just, the development of City Blossoms as an entrepreneurial experience.
Yes.
Right. And I had a lot of fun doing it. Definitely was challenging, but I appreciated the opportunity to be able to create kind of whatever we wanted to create as a team. And so I've always thought that that's important to have the same opportunities for the young people that we work with. And it's looked different along the years, but especially for like preteens and teens, there was always an entrepreneurial aspect to it. Partly because that's what naturally interests them, partly because it was something that I thought was fun, but also a lot of them were coming from communities where they needed to think about real life skills.
Yeah.
I'm doing parentheses,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But they needed to think about kind of their next steps always, while at the same time enjoying nature and enjoying food. And so I thought it would be the most respectful thing we could do is kind of combine both. And it was something that they would find really exciting. So we did small projects throughout the years. I lived in Baltimore for a little while, so there's a group of young people that I worked with in Baltimore, and we would experiment. And then finally, Eastern High School called us one day when we were really ready. And so, and they said, we opened this door and we didn't realize we have this fantastic greenhouse and magical secret garden. Can you come and do something with us?
Magical secret garden.
It really is. It's walled, so unfortunately no one else can see it, but it's like pretty magical.
Oh, man.
It was something that I think was happening in the 90s, and then everyone had just kind of forgotten about it. And we were really excited. And our rule is we wait to be invited in. So Eastern invited us. So we're like, okay, let's do this. And so it took a few years to get it going. And what we call now the Youth Entrepreneurship Cooperative Program is the program that's run by City Blossoms. And through that program, we work with young people, and they have their own business called Mighty Greens, which they named themselves. And so that's so that they have some autonomy within their business, but that we're still running this program. So just kind of to like explain that. And so through Mighty Greens, and I don't want to tell their story too much because hopefully they will be on.
I want them to come in and share their story. Yep.
But through Mighty Greens, they get to run their business, and they use the gardens and the greenhouses now at Eastern and Cardoza to grow seedlings and share and sell them, grow produce and sell that, but also make added value products.
Yes.
So they have their tea line. They have a
tea line.
Yes, they have 5 different teas that they've come up with the recipes with, and that was very much with the educator who works with them, Malka. They did a lot of exploration to figure out that. They have their food line, so they have their herbs to Eastern and herbs to Cardoza, and it's like a herb salt mix.
I love it.
And then they have their body stuff. They have like a really nice shea butter body balm and something else. And so
check them out, guys.
They're pretty fantastic. They're on Instagram too, Mighty Greens DC.
Yep, I follow them.
Yeah, they're pretty great. So they manage their business, run it, they make a profit, and because they work like a co-op, they then share the profit as a co-op would, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so the idea was really to explore an entrepreneurship as a communal activity versus an individual activity, both because there's a history of that in communities of color, but also because I think when you have limited resources, being an entrepreneur just by yourself is really tough.
Yes,
and so let's talk about how we pull resources together to do good. So that was just kind of that. And then through their work at Mighty Greens, they also interact and participate and support other work happening in City Blossoms. So they come into other spaces. They're examples of leadership for younger kids. Hopefully they become like a fellow at City Blossoms down the line if there's someone who's really interested, or a board member or something like that. So we try to really intertwine it all together.
I love it. Well, I couldn't bring up City Blossoms, obviously, and not shout out Mighty Greens, because I love their work, and you guys check them out, and I'm excited to have them in this space because I want them to share their story. They're doing some awesome things. I need to go get my tea because I am a tea drinker. I don't drink coffee, guys. I love tea. All right. I'm all about this.
That's pretty great.
Yay, I'm excited. So we just have a few more moments, but I'm not leaving this show without talking about a book that you and 2 other folks collaborated on. I'm not doing that. I'm resurrecting that. You laugh. I do my research now. Because I believe people are out here doing greatness, and I'm not letting it go. And I thought it was pretty dynamic. I need to go get it. So you got maybe 60 seconds. That's pressure, but you can do it. Maybe a minute and a half. So you and 2 other individuals co-authored, would you say,
yes,
or put together a book called Garden Gastronomy. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Garden Gastronomy, Gastronomía del Jardín.
What she said.
En el Jardín is a bilingual kid-focused cookbook that we designed at City Blossoms. And it was a response to the fact that we have what we call our community green spaces, which are kid gardens that are based in neighborhoods. They're not based at a school, and kids can just come during open times and hang out there.
Wow.
And many times they come for there's many kids who come for years. Or then their siblings come, and then, a parent and whatever. So anyway, we do recipes in those gardens, usually at least once a week. And we have 4 of those spaces now in DC. And through that, we started designing these recipes, both the staff, but also with the kid input. And we would come up with like a kale avocado spread or kale chickpea spread. Everyone really loved doing summer rolls, which we were taught when this Vietnamese youth group would come to the garden often. So we really got into that. And so we just had all these recipes and decided that we wanted to package it. And anything that we package, we try to make it bilingual, so it's accessible to Spanish and English-speaking communities. And we had a graphic designer just drop out of nowhere who was amazing and helped us put the book together. And a food photographer who was amazing, whose son had been an intern, and like the stars aligned.
The stars aligned.
It was amazing.
I love that.
And then we ended up with this fantastic book, and now we have it to share, and we've been able to share it all around the country. And so it's out there doing
and
its
it's
work.
Still for sale, right?
Yep, it's still for sale. You can check
Come
out
on
our
now.
website.
We're talking about support, entrepreneurship. Buy the book. I'm going to get the book. You buy the book.
It's pretty lovely.
That is exciting. Rebecca, it's been great having you here on the show.
Thank you very much.
I was just literally excited just to sit down and talk to you one-on-one because we see each other in these different spaces. Let me tell you, the last time, you were at an event that I put together like last summer or whatever, last fall, I don't remember, at Uptop Acres. But I remember the time before that. So Rebecca is a builder, y'all. Like, I'm telling you, like, she was in here trying to get some stuff together. But I remember the last time when she was at Rooting, putting together like a whole like garden bed, like hammers, nails. And she's just like, and this is how you do it. And bam, bam, bam. And that's actually one of the things that because we had some technical difficulties, guys. So I really wanted to touch on about people being really hands-on in the garden space. Sorry, we didn't get to that. So don't come to me saying you didn't talk about that. I'm out of time, guys. Okay. Like, stuff happens. We'll have her back on the show when Mighty Greens comes in. But I did really want to touch on the fact of people just being really hands-on in the garden space, because this girl over here
Yes, I will build you a garden.
She will build you a garden.
And I will put drills in hands of like any young person who's ready to like jump in there as well. So.
And she's not playing.
Nope.
Like, I'm looking at her now like, what you about to go do after the show, girl?
I think I have to use a jigsaw today.
Oh gosh, she's not joking. Nope. Where can we find City Blossoms at, again, on Instagram, Facebook, and wherever else you are, website?
Yep. Our website is www.cityblossoms.org, and then we are definitely on Instagram at City Blossoms. Also, obviously, check out Mighty Greens.
Yes.
And our Facebook page. And just look us up.
Awesome.
And contact us if you want to hang out or do anything, or check out where any of our spaces are.
Yep. And buy the book, y'all. Garden Gastronomy.
Yep.
I got it. Okay, so really quickly, guys, I have like a minute to do this. We're going to do a rapid fire. You ready for me, Rebecca?
Okay, gonna try.
Uh-oh. What is your favorite leafy green?
Kale.
You and like 10 other people.
I
love it.
know.
Kale, yeah. Kale, yeah. Kale,
not
yeah.
bad.
Sweet, spicy, sour, or salty?
Salty sweet. That's all about it. Unless it's the mangoes in the bag with the hot sauce.
Oh, I lived in New York for a couple of years. Okay?
You got the mangoes in the bag?
Absolutely. I was
my
in
favorite
Crown
things.
Heights, Harlem. I was just like, all right, give me everything, okay? I mean, you're talking about the best mangoes that came out of that city. I'm telling you. Your favorite fruit?
Mango.
What's cooking in your pot these days? Literally. She's giving this eye. She already saw.
Cooking, not so much. I made a very delicious edamame and corn salad with some herbs in my backyard.
That sounds delicious.
I can make a mean salad, but as soon as fire's involved,
That's okay. That sounds absolutely divine.
thank you.
All
Well,
right.
you're always welcome. Some.
I was going to say, will you share with me next time? Thank you. One way someone can channel their inner edible activism.
Come hang out with us in the garden. I mean, I know that sounds kind of like a plug, but
No.
really, like, there's spaces all around, and so we need people in them to like liven them up and be part of them. So you can always come join us, and we're strong believers in partnerships.
Real talk. Reach out to Rebecca, guys. They're a really awesome organization. Rebecca is an awesome person. Thank you for sharing a bit about your background and your upbringing. And so this was dope. All right, guys. So I got to go. I'm already running over. Let me say my little spill. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We are here live on Full Service Radio every Wednesday at 11 a.m. You can access each episode after it airs on iTunes and Spotify. You can also catch today's show on fullserviceradio.org, which is also home to some other really cool podcasters. So please check them out. Follow me at Food Talks DC on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Are you an edible activist? I'm sure you are. Come join me on the show. I would love to feature you. Just shoot me a DM on Instagram. Thanks and have a wonderful day. Peace.
Gracias.